Welcome back to This is Thailand. Today's story comes from a man named Murray Petrusiak, 52 years old from Sudbury, Ontario, a mining town in the north of Canada where the winters hit -30 and the snow doesn't leave until May. Murray spent 29 years as a lineman, power lines, storm restoration crews. He was the man they sent up the pole in an ice storm at 3 in the morning while everyone else was sitting in the dark waiting for the lights to come back on. That's a job where you learn to read danger. You learn what's live and what's dead and what will kill you if you touch it wrong. Murray was good at it. 29 years, not a single serious injury on his crew. He'll tell you that himself, and he's not bragging when he says it. He's telling you something about how he saw himself. And that's the thing about this story. Because a man who spends 30 years judging what's safe and what isn't starts to believe he can judge anything. Murray came to Thailand with a marriage behind him and a bank account he didn't understand. He wasn't looking for the bars. He'll be very clear about that. He never set foot in one. What he found instead was a woman folding laundry in the lobby of his condo building, in a village in Isan that called him brother, and a question he never got around to asking. 3 years later, he's still in Thailand, still thinking about that question. This one's going to stick with you, and I'll say this up front. It is not a simple story about a bad woman. If that's what you're expecting, you're going to be uncomfortable by the end. Here's Murray, in his own words. I need to explain the work first. Because if you don't understand the work, none of the rest of it makes any sense. I was a lineman, 29 years, mostly storm restoration, out of Sudbury. That's Northern Ontario. Nickel Town. If you've never been, picture rock and black spruce and a lake every 4 kilometers and a winter that starts in October and doesn't quit. Storm crew means you go out when everybody else is coming in. Ice storm hits, the lines come down under the weight, whole townships go dark, and they call you at 2 in the morning, and you get in the bucket truck, and you drive out to some concession road in Chelmsford, and you go up. Up is the thing. You go up a pole in the dark with freezing rain coming sideways, and you work above a line that will end you if you get careless. Not hurt you, end you. I've seen it. Twice. Not on my crew. I want that on the record. Never on my crew. But I've seen what a man looks like after. So you learn to read it. That's what the job is, really. Everything else is just muscle. You look at a situation and you find the thing that will kill you, and once you've found it, you can work. The danger's not the problem. The danger you can't see is the problem. 29 years. Not one serious injury on any crew I ran. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand who I thought I was. The marriage, Lorraine. I'm not going to do the whole thing. It's not interesting, and it makes me sound like a guy at the end of a bar. We were married 19 years, no kids, and it went quiet somewhere around year 12. And neither of us said anything about it because saying something about it wasn't what we did. Here's what happened. In the summer of 2019, a fella named Rick Boisvert served me papers in my own driveway. I was carrying a bag of softener salt for the water system. I remember that. 20 kilos of salt on my shoulder and this young guy in a golf shirt saying my name like a question. Turned out Lorraine's lawyer had been building the file for 8 months. 8 months. Bank records, statements, the works. I'd been going to work every day and coming home and eating dinner across from a woman who had a lawyer. I got a lawyer of my own. Sat in his office in a chair that was too small for me. He walked me through it. What we could fight, what it would cost, how long. And I listened, and then I said, just give me the paper. He said, Murray, you should read it. I read to about page 2. I signed it because fighting felt like begging. And I'll say that plain, I don't beg. My old man didn't beg, and I don't beg. Whether that's a virtue or the stupidest thing about me, I genuinely could not tell you anymore. I've had 3 years to think about it, and I still don't know. She got the house on Ramsey Lake, half the pension, and the truck, the F-250, which she never drove. Not once, not one single time in 19 years. She just wanted it, and I let her have it because arguing about a truck in front of a lawyer at $400 an hour is not something a man does. What she didn't get was the camp. The camp was on the French River. I built it. Not had it built it. 11 summers. I put the piers in myself. I framed it. I ran the wire. I did the septic. There was a dock. There was a wood stove I got from a guy in Albany for $200, and a case of blue. Her lawyer never asked about it. It was in my dad's name until 2011, and it slipped through. 8 months of file building, and they missed it. So I sold it. I want to be honest about why. Wasn't strategy. I sold it because after the papers came, I drove out there one Saturday in October and sat on the dock, and I could not think of one single reason to be there. Sold the camp, sold the boat, sold the sled, sold the tools. 30 years of tools, my grandfather's chisels in there, gone to a guy in Val Caron for $1,100. And when it was all done, all of it, I had $212,000 sitting in an account at the credit union on Notre Dame. $212,000. More money than I'd ever had at one time in my life. And it felt like absolutely nothing. It felt like nothing because that's not money. That's the price of everything I used to own, converted into a number on a screen. The credit union phoned me twice a year, asked if I'd like to sit down with an advisor and talk about my goals. I said no thanks. Every time. Polite. Because what was I going to tell him? I didn't know what to ask. I didn't have goals. I had a number in a rented one-bedroom on LaSalle with a window that looked at a Tim Hortons. I went back to work for a while. 2 more years. And here's the part that scared me, if I'm honest. I was fine at work. Perfectly fine. Went up the pole, did the job, came down. Nobody could tell. I could still read a line. I just couldn't read anything else. And there was nothing else, so it didn't come up. And then in the spring of 2022, Danny Fillion put a picture on Facebook. Danny worked with me 11 years. Miserable bugger. Complained about everything. The truck, the coffee, the union, his knees, the government. Face on him like a wet weekend in November. And there he is on my phone, standing on a golf course in a place called Hua Hin in Thailand, in a golf shirt. Smiling. I mean actually smiling. Not the picture kind. I sat in my truck outside the Foodland, and I looked at that photo for a long time. And I thought, I have known that man for 11 years, and I have never once seen his face do that. So I sent him a message. Bangkok lasted 11 days. I'd booked a hotel on Sukhumvit because that's what the internet told me to do. And I came out of the airport into air that felt like a wet towel over your face. 34 degrees at 9 at night. I stood on the curb in my jacket. My jacket. I'd worn a jacket to the airport in Toronto because it was April, and it was April in my head. I want to say something now and get it out of the way because I know what you're all thinking when you hear a 52-year-old divorced Canadian showed up in Thailand alone. I never went to a bar. Not once. Not Nana, not Soy Cowboy, none of it. I walked past Nana Plaza on my 3rd night because I got turned around looking for a place to eat. And there were these girls out front in the light, and the music was coming out of 3 places at once. And one of them said something to me and put her hand on my arm, and I said, sorry, and I actually apologized to her. Twice, and walked into the road and nearly got taken out by a motorbike. That's what that scene did to me. It didn't tempt me. It embarrassed me. Made me feel like a big stupid animal standing where he shouldn't be standing. So, no bars. I've said that a lot in the last 3 years. I said it to Danny, I said it to the guys at the condo, and I've said it to myself more times than I can count, usually late at night, like it was some kind of proof of something. Because here's what I've worked out since. Saying I wasn't one of those guys, it didn't protect me from anything. It just meant I never thought I needed protecting. Anyway, Bangkok. Too loud, too fast. Traffic that doesn't move and then moves all at once. The noise starts at 5 in the morning with the birds and the monks and the sweepers, and it doesn't stop. I ate at 7-Eleven for 4 days straight because it was air-conditioned and nobody talked to me, and you could point at a toasted sandwich and the girl would put it in the machine and hand it back to you. And that was the entire transaction. Then I went down to Hua Hin to see Danny, and Danny was great, genuinely. Picked me up at the bus station, hugged me, which he had never done in 11 years of standing next to me in a bucket truck. Took me for beers. He'd gone brown and lost about 30 pounds, and he still had the golf shirt on. The pitch when it came was about 4 words long. He said, it's warm and it's cheap. And I said, yeah, no, I can see that. But then he took me to the place where they all go, some bar restaurant near the market with a Union Jack and a Canadian flag on the wall, and 8 or 9 fellas around a long table, all of them my age or older, all of them with a Leo in front of them. And boys, I sat there for 2 hours and I listened to those men complain. Complain about immigration, complain about the price of cheese, complain about Thai drivers, Thai bureaucracy, Thai women, Thai builders. One of them went on for 10 solid minutes about how you can't get a decent sausage. And I remember looking around that table and thinking, you chose this. Every man here got on a plane and chose this. And you've been here 9 years complaining about a sausage. That scared me more than Nana Plaza did. I love Danny, I still do. But I couldn't stay in Hua Hin because I could see the chair they'd have left open for me at that table, and I could see myself sitting in it in 4 years, brown and bitter and full of Leo, talking about sausages. So I went north, Chiang Mai. No real reason. A guy on the bus said the air was better, which turned out to be a lie 6 months of the year. But never mind. And I found a condo, mid-tier place off Niman, about a 15-minute walk to the Maya Mall. 18,000 baht a month, which is about 700 Canadian. Pool nobody used. Guard at the gate who saluted me every single day for 3 years, and whose name I am ashamed to say I never learned. 2-bedroom, tiled, cold as a meat locker if you left the aircon on. And I did leave it on. First man in the history of Northern Ontario to move to the tropics and turn the temperature back down. Now here's the thing about Chiang Mai that I couldn't get past. The wiring. I don't know if anybody's ever pointed this out to you, but go and look at a power pole in Thailand. Go and look. It's a bird's nest. It's a bloody bird's nest of black cable, hundreds of lines, dead ones nobody's cut, live ones spliced with tape, drop lines hanging down over the soi like laundry on a line. There's places on Naaman where the bundle is thicker than a man's waist. There's transformers hung up there like Christmas ornaments. 29 years I did that job. 29 years of clearance, of separation, of documented dead ends and tagged out circuits. And I'd stand on the sidewalk with a bag of mangoes in my hand, looking straight up, and my mouth would be hanging open. And nobody else looked. That's the part. Nobody else even looked up. Thousands of people walking under that every day, sitting under it, eating cow soy, riding their scooters under it with a baby on the tank. And nothing happens. Day after day, nothing happens. I used to say to myself, well, it works, doesn't it? It works. All right, so 4 months. That's how long I was in that condo on my own before anything happened worth telling you about. And I'm not going to lie about those 4 months. I'd get up at 6 because I'd always got up at 6. Walk. Coffee at the same place. Back to the condo. Read the news from home, which is a stupid thing to do, and I did it every day. Nap. Then around 4, I'd go out and eat, always alone, usually pad thai or cow pad from the same lady on the corner because she'd stopped asking me questions and just started cooking when she saw me coming. Then 7-Eleven, then bed. There were days, and I'm being honest with you here sitting where you are, there were days I would count how many words I'd said out loud. Not on purpose. It had just occurred to me around 9 at night. Some days it was 11 words. Some days it was fewer. I had $212,000 in the bank, and I was speaking 11 words a day. And then, in the September, I did my laundry. There's a counter on the ground floor by the mailboxes. Little laundry service, 2 machines, a folding table, a fan. You drop off a bag, they wash it. You pick it up the next day, 40 baht a kilo. I brought my bag down, and I'd folded everything before I brought it, which is insane. I know it's insane. Who folds the clothes he's bringing to be washed? A man who has nothing else to do that day, that's who. The woman behind the counter was maybe 40, small, hair up in a clip. She had a fan pointed at her face and a plastic stool she didn't sit on. She opened the bag, took out one of my work shirts. I still wore work shirts, God help me. And she looked at it, and she looked at me, and she just started laughing. Not a polite laugh. Not the smile everybody gives you here that's a door, not a window. She laughed at me, right in my face, and then she shook the shirt out and refolded it in about 4 seconds. Sharp corners, like a soldier, and held it up so I could see it. Then she pointed at my folding, then at hers, then she laughed again. For 2 years I'd been a file. I'd been a problem in a binder that a young fella in a golf shirt handed to me in my driveway. Nobody in 2 years had treated me like a person who was simply, ordinarily funny. Her name was Kanya. Everybody called her Fawn. And the next week I brought down a bag of shirts that were already clean. Yeah, I know. It took about 6 weeks before we said anything to each other that wasn't about laundry. And I want you to understand what that actually looked like, because it wasn't romantic. It was two people who couldn't really talk, standing on either side of a folding table with a fan going. Her English was functional, that's the word. She could do prices, days, weather, food. She could not do sentences with a middle in them, and my Thai was nothing. Still is, mostly. 3 years and I can order food and count to 20 and say sorry, which about sums up my time here. So it came in pieces, little bits, a few words at a time, over months. She was 39. She was from Roy Et, which I had to look up. It's out in Isan, the northeast, flat and hot and poor, 7 or 8 hours from Chiang Mai on the bus. She'd come up here for work. She'd been at that counter 3 years. Widow. 2 years, she said. She said it the way you'd say the shop closes at 8. And there was a boy, 7 years old, living down in Roy Et with her mother, because there was no way to have him in Chiang Mai while she was standing at a counter 12 hours a day. 12 hours, 7 days sometimes. She made, and I found this out later, not from her, around 14,000 baht a month. 550 bucks Canadian, and she sent most of it home. Now here's the thing that got me. Here's the thing that actually got in under my ribs. She never once complained about it, not once, not a word. I'm a guy who spent 29 years around men who complained about everything. The truck, the coffee, the overtime, the union, their wives, their knees. I complained. We all complained. It's what you do to pass the time when your hands are frozen. And this small woman was working 12-hour days in a hot room, sending her money to a village she never got to see, raising a kid by telephone, and she'd take my bag of shirts and say something about the rain and laugh. I misread that. I want to be clear about that. I misread that completely, and I'll come back to it. Now, the dinners. I asked her out for dinner and she said no. I asked again a couple of weeks later. No. Third time, no. Fourth time, and I'm a stubborn man, I want that on record. Fourth time, no. 4 times. 4 refusals. And I want to walk you through what my brain did with that, because it's the single most important thing in this entire story, and it's going to sound insane to you. On the job, when you're not sure about a structure, a pole, a cross arm, an old anchor, you load it. You put weight on it, and you watch what it does. If it moves, you've got a problem. If it holds, it holds. That's not a guess. That's data. You've applied a known force, and you've measured the response. So I applied a force. I offered a woman with almost no money a free dinner from a man with $200,000, 4 separate times, and she said no 4 separate times. And I stood there in that lobby and I thought, that structure holds. That's what I thought. In those words, near enough. I ran a load test on a human being and I passed her. And you're sitting there now going, Murray, you thick Canadian bastard. She said no because she was ashamed of her clothes, or because she was tired, or because a woman working a counter in a Farang building has 100 reasons to say no that have nothing to do with her character. Yeah, no. I know that now. The 5th time she said yes, and she paid half. She took me to a little Iseam place, not on Niman, back behind it, plastic tables, a TV up in the corner with the volume off. She ordered. She didn't ask me what I wanted. She just ordered, and it came. And there was som tam and sticky rice and grilled pork and beer, and I want to tell you about the som tam. I've been cold my whole life. I have no tolerance for anything. She said something to the woman making it, and I saw the woman look at me and put in what looked like a reasonable number of chilies, maybe 6. I got about 4 bites in, and my eyes started going, and my nose started running, and I could not, I honest to God could not, breathe through my mouth or my nose. And I'm sitting there, 6'2", 220 pounds, hands like shovels, weeping into a plate of shredded papaya. And Fawn laughed so hard she had to put her head down on the table. She got me a Coke. She was still laughing when she handed it to me, and she said something to the woman at the wok that I didn't understand, and they both laughed, and I sat there with my face on fire. And honest to God, I don't know that I've ever been happier. I paid. She put 200 baht on the table anyway, and pushed it at me and would not take it back. Okay, month 5. I'm downstairs one afternoon. I'm not even there for laundry, I'm getting my mail. And she's on the phone behind the counter, and her voice, it changed. I've said I can't speak Thai, and that's true. But I could hear it. It went flat and low, and she turned her back to the room and put her hand on the counter. And she stood like that for about 4 minutes, not saying much, just listening. And when she hung up, she stood facing the wall for a bit before she turned around. She served the next customer, smiled at him. Same as always. Took me 3 days to work out how to ask. And she didn't want to tell me. That's the truth, and I'll defend it to anybody. I had to go at it 3 or 4 times before she said anything. And even then, she made it sound like nothing. Her mother, kidneys, dialysis twice a week down at the hospital in Royette, and the government covers a lot of it, but it doesn't cover all of it. And there was travel, and there was a backlog of bills. I asked how much. She said, no, Murray, not you problem. I asked how much. 40,000 baht, about 1,600 Canadian, $1,600. Now listen to me. I want you to hear this in the right way. That is a truck payment. That's a set of winter tires and a tune-up. In Sudbury, that's a long weekend. And it was the difference between a woman getting her blood cleaned and a woman not getting her blood cleaned. I had $212,000 sitting in a credit union on Notre Dame Street, doing nothing, earning nothing, meaning nothing, and it was the price of a hunting camp I'd never see again. So I paid it. And I want to be honest with you about how that felt. It felt tremendous. It's the first time in 3 years I did anything that mattered to anybody. I'd have paid that for a stranger. I'd have paid it for a fellow on the crew. No questions, no paperwork, and never mentioned it again. And here's the part you need. She was not happy about it. She was ashamed. Wouldn't look at me. Said, thank you about 4 times too many, and then she avoided me for a week. A whole week I'd come down and someone else would be at the counter, or she'd be busy in the back. And what did I do with that? What did that big brain of mine do with a woman who took my money and then couldn't look at me? I thought, well, there you go. That's not a woman who wanted it. That made me trust her more. That's the trap, and I walked straight into the middle of it whistling. Anyway, end of that week, she came up to my floor with 2 plastic bags and she cooked in my kitchen, which I had never once used. And she made cow pad and something with basil and pork that took her 11 minutes and was better than anything I'd eaten in 3 years. She said my kitchen was very clean. She said it like an insult. It was. And that night, that's the night it stopped being nothing. She moved in the way water gets into a boat. Not all at once. You don't notice it happening, and then one day you're sitting in it. A bag, then a second bag, then a rice cooker, which she bought herself because mine was, well, I didn't have one. Then a shelf in the bathroom that became her shelf without anybody discussing it. Then one day I came back from the market, and there were her flip-flops by the door and a little spirit house thing on the balcony rail with a stick of incense in it and marigolds, and I thought, right, okay then. I never asked her to move in. She never asked me either. It just happened, the way weather happens. And I want to be honest with you about that year, because if I skip past it, or if I make it sound like I was being played the whole time, then I'm lying to you, and I'd rather not do that. That year was the happiest I have ever been in my life. I'm 52 years old, and I'm telling you that a year in a 2-bedroom condo off Nimon with a woman who couldn't have a proper conversation with me was better than 19 years of marriage in a house on Ramsey Lake. Make of that what you want. Says more about me than it says about Lorraine, probably. Here's what it looked like. She got up at 4:30. I'd hear her out on the balcony with her coffee. Then she'd go down to the counter and I'd walk. And I'd bring her something at 11. Always the same thing. Moo ping and sticky rice from the cart on the corner. Because she liked it, and because if I brought her something different, she'd laugh at me. And I liked being laughed at. I ate what she ate. That's a big one. I stopped ordering the Farang food, the fried rice, the safe stuff. She'd order and I'd eat it, and half the time I didn't know what it was. Larb, tom yum, that fermented fish stuff that they put in the som tam out in Isan that will strip the paint off a truck. I got so I could handle chilies. Not well, but I could handle them. I tried to learn Thai. I was terrible, genuinely, unbelievably terrible. It's a tonal language, and I have a voice like a bag of gravel going down a chute, and I would say a word and she would laugh and correct me, and I would say it again, and she would laugh harder. I once tried to tell her the market was close by, and apparently I told her the market was a horse. She used to bring it up months later, out of nowhere. Market horse, and she'd start giggling. I was not lonely. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? For the first time since 2019, I wasn't lonely. All right, month 9, the money. I want to do this part carefully because one thing a lot of people get this wrong, including the people who watch these videos and then get in the comments and call every one of us idiots. Here's the situation. She's making 14,000 baht a month at that counter. She's working 12-hour shifts. Her hands were always damp, and she had this rash on her forearms from the detergent that never fully cleared up. And she's sending, I found this out slowly, she was sending 9 or 10,000 of it home every month to her mother, for the boy, for the medicine, for the house. She kept 4,000 baht a month to live on in Chiang Mai. That's 160 Canadian dollars a month. So I said, quit. I said, I'll give you 25,000 a month. That's about 1,000 Canadian. Quit the counter. And she argued with me. She actually argued. She said the boss was good to her. She said she'd be bored. She said, and this stuck with me. She said, what if you go home, Murray? I said, I'm not going home. There's nothing there. 25,000 baht a month. Now let me head this off because I know some of you are already writing your comment. That is not a scam. That is not me being fleeced. That is what happens here, and I want to say it flat out. Every single foreign man I met in this country who was with a Thai woman was doing some version of this. All of them. The Dutch fellow on the 4th floor, the Aussie who ran the coffee place, Danny down in Hua Hin with his lady from Buriram, 10, 20, 30,000 a month. It's normal. It's expected. It is not a con. And for me, honestly, it felt good. That's the truth. It felt like a wage. I'd spent my whole life being paid for what I did, and now I got to pay somebody for what she did. And what she did was make my life worth getting up for. I had money that meant nothing. I finally found something to spend it on that wasn't a snowmobile. But here's what I did not understand. And this is the important bit. This is the bit I'd want somebody to have sat me down and explain. I thought I was giving money to Fawn. I wasn't. I was giving money to a structure. She was the eldest. Her father was gone. Her mother was sick. There was a brother, a younger sister, a boy, an uncle who came and went. And in that family, her money was never her money. Not once, not ever, not for one day in her life. It came to her, and it went out again through her. And the idea that she might keep it, that idea didn't exist. It wasn't a thing she was choosing not to do. It was a thing that didn't occur to anybody. That's not greed. I want to be very careful here. That is not greed, and it is not manipulation. That is how the whole thing is built out there. It's load-bearing. You take that out, and the family comes down. I got about 10% of that at the time. Maybe 5. Okay. Now the things I saw and didn't look at, the boy, she called him her nephew, twice, 2 separate times, months apart. And both times I heard it and something in my head went, And then I thought, well, her English is what it is. And Thai family words are different anyway. They call everybody auntie and uncle, an older brother. Half the village is somebody's cousin. Translation thing? Fine. Didn't ask. The phone calls on the balcony. She'd take her phone and slide the door shut. Not every call. Some calls. And she'd stand out there with her back to the glass. And it'd be a long one. And she'd come in and be quiet for an hour. Didn't ask. Her mother on the video call. Line, always line, propped against the fruit bowl. And that old woman would not look at the camera. 3 years. Not once. Not properly. She'd look at Fawn. She'd look at the floor. She'd look somewhere off to the side of the screen. and say her piece, and then it was over. And I decided that was shyness. Old lady village, never met a foreigner. Sure, didn't ask. Knock. The younger sister came up to Chiang Mai on the bus twice that year, and she was cold with me. Not rude, nobody's rude here. That's the thing, nobody's ever rude. But she'd sit at the far end of the table, and she'd look at me sometimes when she thought I couldn't see, and there was something in her face that I did not have a name for. I decided she was shy too, and once, I got close. We're on the balcony, it's late, there's the noise from Niman coming up and somebody's dog going off, and I said to her, "Fawn, is there anything I should know?" Just that, anything I should know. And she was quiet for a while. And then she said, "You never ask me questions, Murray." That's it. That's all she said. And I sat there and I felt, and I swear to God this is true, I felt proud. I thought she was saying I was easy to be with. I thought she meant I wasn't like the other ones, the interrogators, the ones who checked the phone. I thought it was a compliment. Yeah, I asked her to marry me in the parking lot of the Maya Mall in the November. No ring. Hadn't planned it. We were putting bags in the back of a Grab, and I just said it, and I said it badly, and she looked at me for about 4 seconds too long. And then she said yes. The sin sod came up about 3 weeks after the parking lot, not from Fawn, from her mother through Fawn, on a line call, which is how everything came from that family in the end. And I'd heard the word by then. You can't be in this country 6 months and not hear it. So I did what I do, which is I researched it. I sat in that condo for 3 nights with a laptop, and I read everything I could find, and I want to tell you, a lot of what's out there is garbage. Angry men on forums. The best thing I read was written by an actual Thai woman, and it said something like, "It's not a purchase. It's a demonstration. It's the family standing up in front of the village and saying, look, this man is serious. This man can provide. Our daughter is valued." And the village looks, and it's noted, and the family's face is intact. Face, that word again. Took me 2 years to understand what it actually costs people here. Now, I went and told a couple of the expat lads at the coffee place on Niman that I was doing it, and one of them, a Yorkshireman, decent fella actually, been here 11 years, he put his cup down and he said, "So you're buying a wife?" And I said, "No." That's all I said. I'm not a debater. I said no, and I finished my coffee, and I went home. But I'll tell you what I thought. I bought Lorraine a house. I bought her a car she didn't drive. I paid for 19 years of a life, and at the end of it, a young fella in a golf shirt handed me a folder in my own driveway. Nobody called that buying a wife. That was just called being married. 300,000 baht, about 12,000 Canadian. They asked for 500. I offered 2. Uncle did the talking, an uncle I'd met twice, and we landed on 3. And honestly, I negotiated like a man apologizing. I couldn't push. Something in me could not push against these people. I kept saying yes, crap, yes, whatever's proper, and Fawn sat beside me looking at the floor the whole time. She told me afterwards she told them not to ask for 5. I don't know if that's true. I've thought about it a lot. It might be true. It's the kind of thing that's usually true and useless at the same time. Now the wedding, I'm going to try to do this properly, because if you don't understand this part, you won't understand anything that comes after. Mary Roy tea, 40 degrees, no shade. That flat rice country heat that just sits on you. The village is about 40 houses and a temple and a shop and a lot of dust. Dogs everywhere. Roosters going off at all hours like they've got a personal grievance. They put up a marquee in front of her mother's house, which at that time was a concrete box with a tin roof and no ceiling. And I want you to hold on to that because it matters later. Monks came at dawn, 9 of them, and I sat there on the floor with my legs folded under me like a big collapsing deck chair, sweating through a white shirt. And they chanted, and I understood not one word of it, and it went on for a long time, and I didn't mind. They tied white string around my wrists. Everyone did. You sit there, and one after another, people come and tie a piece of string on you and say a blessing. And by the end, I had both forearms wrapped to the elbow in string, and every one of those strings was somebody in that village telling me I was in. They called me Phi, older brother. The boy, remember they called him, he was 8 by then. He held my hand for the photograph. Just took it. Didn't ask. And he had this serious little face, and he stood there and gripped my finger, and I had to look away from the camera for a second. Then the whiskey. Hong Thong poured into my glass by every man in that village, one after another, and they'd slap my back and say something, and everyone would laugh, and I'd laugh too, and I had no idea what I was laughing at. Somebody set up speakers. Somebody was cooking a pig. There was a woman doing the som tam in a big mortar, and the sound of it, thunk, 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 went on all day, and there's the chili in the air, and the fish sauce, and the dust and the heat. 100 people. I could not speak to any of them. And I have never in my life, and I mean this, and I am 52 years old, I have never in my life belonged to anything the way I belonged to that yard on that day. I'd been alone since 2019, alone in a rented one-bedroom with a window looking at a Tim Hortons, and now I was somebody's fi. I want you to hear that clearly, because in about 10 minutes I'm going to tell you how it ended, and I do not want you sitting there thinking I was a stupid man who got fleeced by a stranger. I was a happy man who got taken in by a family, and those are not the same thing, and the second one hurts a hell of a lot more. The house came the year after. Her mother's place was concrete and tin. It flooded. There was no proper septic. Old woman on dialysis, living in a box that was 30 degrees inside at night. Nobody asked me to build a house. I want to be precise about that. Nobody sat me down. It came up. It got mentioned. Somebody would talk about the roof. Fawn would say her mother didn't sleep well in the hot season, and it grew in me until it was my idea. And I put it forward like it was my idea, and everyone was very surprised and very grateful. That's not manipulation. Or if it is, it's the softest kind there is, and I'd have done it anyway. 2.1 million baht, 84,000 Canadian. Now here's where you're all shouting at your screens. I know a foreigner cannot own land in Thailand. I knew it then. I knew it before I ever picked up a shovel. The land was in her mother's name, Fawn's mother, and there was no way around that, and I did not even try to find one. 2 men told me I was insane, the Yorkshiremen again, and a Dutch fella in my building who was actually kind about it, who sat me down and drew it out in a napkin. He said, get a usufruct. Right of habitation, registered at the land office 30 years, costs you almost nothing, and it means you can't be put out of a house you paid for. And I said no. And I want to explain that because it's the stupidest thing I ever did, and it wasn't stupidity. Paperwork is what Lorraine did to me. 8 months of file building while I ate dinner across from her. A folder in my driveway. That's what documents are, in my head. That's what they're for. Documents are what people who are getting ready to take something from you make while you're not looking. So I wasn't going to be that. I was not going to sit in front of a family who tied string on my wrists and slide a contract across the table. I said, a house you build for a family you belong to isn't an investment. It's a house. I actually said that. Out loud. To a Dutchman with a napkin. Then the truck. Her brother Golf needed a pickup for the work he was going to do. 450,000 baht, 18,000 Canadian. Then Golf's debt, then a second debt that never got explained properly to me, that I paid, and I still don't know what it was for. And the requests stopped coming from Fawn. That's the thing I noticed. They started coming through her, Mother says, Uncle says. The village needs. She'd deliver them with her eyes somewhere else in the room. 30 months in, I sat down one night with a beer and my banking app, and I did the arithmetic, which I had somehow not done in 3 years. $151,000. I sat there and I read that number 4 or 5 times. I wasn't angry. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't suspicious. I was tired. That's all. Just tired. So I said to her, Fawn, we have to slow this down. And she didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't say a single word. She just stopped speaking to me. 4 days. Cooked, cleaned, slept beside me, wouldn't look at me. 4 days of a silence you could lean on. And I still don't know what that was. Was that her being hurt? Was that her handling me? Is that just what a woman from Asan does when a man shames her in her own kitchen? I don't know. I never asked. Songkran, April. 3 years, near enough, since I'd walked into that laundry counter. We went down to Royat for the whole week. Everybody does. It's the water festival. It's the Thai New Year. And out in the village, it's not the thing you've seen on the videos. It's not Bangkok. It's not Siloam with the foam and the DJs. It's slower. It's kids on the road with buckets. It's old people getting water poured gently over their hands as a blessing. It's a pickup going by at walking pace with a plastic barrel in the back and 6 teenagers screaming. And it's 41 degrees, and everyone is soaking wet all day for 4 days. And there is hong thong in a plastic cup in your hand from about 10 in the morning onward. The house was finished by then. My house. Not my house. The house. And it was good. It was a good house. 2-story, proper roof, real bathroom, a ceiling so the heat didn't sit on you at night. The old woman had a room on the ground floor because she couldn't do stairs anymore with the dialysis. There was a tiled porch and a spirit house out front that I paid for, and a big new Isuzu in the yard that I also paid for. And I sat on that porch and I was miserable. I want to be careful here because I've had a long time to think about this, and I don't want to make myself out to be smarter than I was. I did not suspect anything. Nothing. Not one thing. If you'd sat me down that week and said, Murray, this woman has lied to you about something enormous, I'd have laughed at you. I was just tired. Tired in a way that had been coming on for 6 months. The 4 days of silence back in the winter had ended the way those things end. She started talking again. Nobody mentioned it, and the money went back to going out. Because what was I going to do? Hold the line? Sit in a house I'd built for a family and refuse to fix the mother's dialysis transport? So, Songkran. I'm sitting on my own porch in a wet shirt with a plastic cup, being called Phi, by men whose names I can't pronounce. Watching a boy who calls me something I never quite got the meaning of run around the yard with a water pistol. Beam was 9 by then. All right, second night. Big table out the back, plastic chairs, a speaker playing Morlem so loud it was distorting. The smell of grilled pork and riverweed and mosquito coil. The women were cooking. The men were drinking. Fawn was in and out. And Knock, the sister, the cold one, the one I decided 3 years ago was just shy. Knock was drunk, and she started on Fawn. I didn't understand a word of it, not one word. But I know a family fight when I see one, and this one had rooms in it. This one had a basement, voices going up, other people stepping in, the mother saying something sharp, the uncle putting a hand out, Knock pointing at the house, pointing at the ground, pointing at the house again. The house, that much I got. Whatever it was about the house, and it was about who was going to end up with it, and it had clearly been chewed over in that family for a long time, in rooms I was never in. And I did what I always did. I sat there with my drink, and I smiled, and I waited for it to blow over, because it wasn't my business, and I didn't have the words, and Murray Petrusiak does not make a scene. Then Knock turned around and looked at me, and she said, in English, and her English was better than I ever knew, which tells you something all on its own. She said, you know Beam is her son, yes? And the music was still going. The kids were still out front with the buckets. Somebody was laughing at the other end of the table. I said, what? She said, her son, not nephew, her son. And then she said the rest of it, fast and angry and not at me. That's the thing I want you to understand. She wasn't trying to hurt me. I was just the closest hard surface. She said the father is Adun. Adun is not dead. Adun lives in Royet, 40 minutes away, has always lived 40 minutes away, and some of your money goes to him. I want to describe what that was like, and I can't do it properly. It wasn't a shock. Shock is a thing that hits you. This was the opposite. This was the floor going. 29 years I climbed poles. And there's a thing that happens sometimes where you're up there and the structure moves. Not much, a couple of inches. And in that second, everything you thought was solid becomes a question, and your whole body knows it before your head does. That's what it was. I stood up. I remember I put my cup down very carefully, which is a stupid thing to remember. Fawn came out onto the porch. And I want to tell you what I expected, because it's important. I expected her to deny it, or I expected her to cry. I'd have taken either one. I think I'd have taken either one and let it go. God help me. She didn't do either. She got angry. She stood there in a wet t-shirt with her arms down at her sides, and she looked me in the face and she said, "You never asked me." And I said something. I don't know what. And she said it again. Not one time. Not one time in 3 years did you ask me anything. 3 years, Murray, you never ask. And here's the thing. She was right. I knew she was right while she was saying it. Right there, standing on the tiles I paid for, with the water fight going on out front, I knew it. She'd said it to me on a balcony in Chiang Mai 2 years earlier, and I'd taken it as a compliment. I never asked because asking felt like begging. Because a man who asks is a man who doesn't already know. Because you don't ask on a crew, you watch. And because, and this is the part that took me 4 months to get to, because I did not want to be told anything that would make me leave. I built that fence myself and I stood behind it for 3 years. The rest came out over about an hour, in pieces in bad English, with her mother crying in the doorway. Adun isn't a boyfriend. He isn't a lover. He's the reason she left Royat in the first place. He put her in the hospital in 2016, and the family will not say his name out loud. And the story in the village is that Fawn's husband died. Because a dead husband is a thing a family can live with, and a violent one who's still walking around at the market is a thing a family cannot live with. That's face. That's what face actually is. It's not vanity. It's a story a family tells so they can keep standing up. And the money to him, that was to keep him away from the boy. Every month, a payment to a man to not come to a house. Nobody told me. Nobody was ever going to tell me. And she said, and this is the sentence that goes round and round in my head, she said, "If I tell you, you go." She cried then. Properly. Not the pretty kind. And I don't know. I've turned that over 1,000 times. Was that a woman who loved me and was terrified? Or was that a woman who had a very good thing going and watched it end? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know. Anybody who tells you they can read that in a face is lying to you, and I'm the last man on earth who should be claiming he can read a face. I walked out of that village at about 11 at night in a wet Songkran shirt with my phone and my passport and nothing else. I got to the road and stood there for a while. There was a dog barking somewhere and the music still going from the yard behind me, and I never went back. I'm going to do this the way I do a damage report after a storm, because that's the only way I can get through it without stopping. $212,000 Canadian. That's what I landed with in the spring of 2022. 61,000 left. So, $151,000 gone in 34 months. And I can tell you where every dollar of it went, near enough. The dialysis, the monthly, the sinsod, the gold, the wedding, the house. That's the big one. 84,000 right there. The truck, Golf's debt, Golf's other debt, the dialysis transport, the uncle's thing, the roof on the shop, the school fees for 2 kids I met 4 times. Not one baht of that was stolen from me. I want to be clear about that. I signed off on every single transfer with my own thumb on my own phone. The house is a good house. It's still standing. It has a proper ceiling and a room on the ground floor for an old woman who can't do stairs. Somebody's living in it right now, tonight while I'm talking to you. It's on land in her mother's name. It always was. That was never a trick. I knew it on the day the first concrete went in. I went to see a lawyer in Chiang Mai in the May. Thai woman, spoke perfect English. Office off the old city moat with a little spirit house out front with orange fauna on it, which I've never understood and never asked about. She was kind. That's what I remember. She was very kind and she let me talk for about 20 minutes, and then she asked me 2 questions. Was there a usufruct registered at the land office? No. Was there a lease? No. Any written agreement of any kind, a loan document, anything at all with your name and her name and a number on it? No. And she put her pen down and she said, "Then I'm sorry. I paid her 2,000 baht for that." Best value of the whole 3 years. And here's the thing I want you to sit with, because I've sat with it for 4 months. I didn't get tricked out of the paperwork. Nobody talked me out of it. A Dutchman drew me the answer on a napkin, and I said no. I said no because paperwork was what Lorraine's lawyer did to me. Because a folder in my own driveway was the last document that ever mattered in my life. And I'd decided somewhere in my chest that documents are what people build in secret while you're eating dinner across from them. So the man who wouldn't sign anything ended up with nothing because he wouldn't sign anything. Yeah. Chew on that one for a while. I have. No pension worth the name. Half of that went in 2019. No property in Canada. No tools. No camp. $61,000 in a 52-year-old body that's been up a pole for 29 years. There's nothing to go back to Sudbury for. I mean that literally. There is no address in that town that is mine. So I'm in a room in Chiang Mai, 9,000 baht a month, near the river, not far from the old city. Fan and an aircon that works when it feels like it. There's a 7-Eleven on the corner, and the woman on the till has started saying my name. I'm okay. I want to say that. I'm not sitting here in the dark. I get up at 6 because I've always got up at 6. I walk. I eat. Now. The part everybody wants from me is the part where one call her a name, and I can't do it. I've had 4 months and I cannot get there. And I've tried, some nights I've genuinely tried, because it would be so much easier if I could. She lied to me. Let's not soften it. She told me a man was dead who was alive. She told me a child was her nephew. She took my money and some of it went out the back door to a man I didn't know existed every month for 3 years. And she also fed me. She laughed at me across a folding table when I was speaking 11 words a day. She dragged me out of the worst thing that ever happened to me and put me in a yard in Royette with string on my arms and 100 people calling me older brother. Both of those are true. Both of them. At the same time. And I'm not going to sit here and pick one for you because it makes a better video. I'll tell you the one thing I'm actually bitter about, and it isn't the money. It's this. For 3 years, I watched that woman's hands. That's what I do. On a crew, you don't ask a man if he's okay. You watch his hands, and his hands tell you everything. And if they're steady, you go up. 29 years, that never once failed me. And I watched her hands for 3 years, and they were steady. Cooking, folding, holding the boy, counting the money. Steady as anything. I never once looked at her face. That's what I did wrong. Not the money, not the house, not even the paperwork, really. I was married 19 years to a woman I never asked a question of, and she built a file on me for 8 months. And then I came here and I did the exact same thing again with somebody else's family, and I called it trust, and I was proud of it. So here's what I've got for you. It's not much. You cannot read a person the way you read a live line. A line will tell you the truth. It's live or it's dead. It doesn't care about you, and that's the whole point. It can't lie because it doesn't know you're there. People aren't like that. And Thai people especially aren't like that. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean the opposite. Nobody in this country is going to volunteer the fault to you. Not out of malice. Because saying it out loud would cost them face, or cost their mother face, or cost a dead man's story its dignity. And they will carry that silence to their grave to spare you an embarrassment you'd have gladly walked through. Silence is not the same thing as safety. So ask. Ask the question. Ask it early. Ask it badly. Ask it rude if you have to. And ask it before the money moves. Because after the money moves, you can't hear the answer anymore. And put it in writing. Not because you don't trust her, because paper is the only thing in this country that's still going to be true in 10 years, and because a usufruct costs about 1,000 baht and would have saved me $84,000 in a family. I still look up. Did I tell you that? I walk down the Soi and I look at those poles, the bird's nest, the dead lines nobody's cut, hanging down over the tables where people eat. Everybody sits under it, every day. Nothing happens. And one day something will, and everybody's going to say nobody saw it coming, and it was right there, the whole time, in plain sight, right over their heads. That's Murray Petrusiak, 52, formerly of Sudbury, Ontario. And I want to be careful with how we close this out, because there's a comment section waiting to call Fawn a monster and Murray a fool, and both of those readings are lazy, and both of them will cost you money if you're the next man on that plane. Nothing that happened to Murray was a scam. That's the uncomfortable part. The sin sod was real tradition. The monthly support was ordinary. It's what tens of thousands of foreign men here do every month, and their marriages are fine. The obligation of an eldest daughter to her family is not a con. It's the load-bearing wall of a whole society, and it does not bend for a Farang's budget. Even the lie about the dead husband was a lie a village told itself first, to survive a violent man, long before Murray ever showed up to hear it. What went wrong was simpler and much harder to fix. A man arrived with $200,000, a hole in his chest, and a rule he'd made in his own driveway that he would never ask anybody for anything ever again. Thailand did not rob him. It just never stopped him. A registered usufruct, a 30-year lease, one written agreement, one direct, awkward, unromantic conversation about a boy's father in year one, when it would have cost him nothing but a bit of discomfort. That's the whole gap. That's where $151,000 went, into the space between the question he could have asked and the silence he mistook for peace. So, what do you think? Was Fawn a liar, a survivor, or both? Tell us in the comments, and be honest, because Murray was. Thanks for watching. This is Thailand.